I hope you're excited just like I am. I can tell you I am very excited today. Yes, hello, hello. I can see some names. Maria Cristina, welcome. Hi, everyone. So let's wait a couple of minutes, maybe 1 or 2 minutes for other people to join us. And while we do that, why don't you tell me where you're coming from? I know there are a lot of people from São Paulo here, right? Probably. Anybody from a different country, maybe? Not from Brazil? Brasília, Rio de Janeiro, wonderful. Oh, we have some Italian people. Oh, actually, it's you, Kata. Good to have you here. Wonderful. Russia, Maceió. Yes, Hungarian. I know that. Nice. So how are you feeling today? Are you excited? I hope you are, really. I'm very honored to be here today. I'm very humbled because this is my baby. You know, I've been working on this for a while now, and I'm incredibly fortunate to actually share this with you once and for all. And I really hope that you can share with the world, because I do think this is going to be very useful. I hope that you can get inspired by this conceptual framework that I designed to help not only you, but anybody involved in education to reflect on the amazing learning cosmos. So Corumbá, Brasília, Belo Horizonte, that's wonderful. I'm very happy that you're all here. So I'm going to take you on a journey now, a voyage into the learner's universe. And I really want to point out that this is the product of, I'd say, a couple of years of work, especially after my dissertation, which hasn't been published yet. So I have to work on that. I've been procrastinating, unfortunately, many things to do. But still, this is definitely related to all of my learning experience and everything that I've ever exchanged with you, other people, very important people in my life. And I really wanted to say thank you all for helping me design this, because this is really almost like a dream come true. This is probably the single most important piece of work I'll ever do, or, you know, at least top 3, right? Because we have to to actually hope that in the future we're going to be able to come up with other things. Yes. So Cristina, hello, hello. Edmundo, wonderful to have you here. And it's such a pleasure to share this in an event like this, you know, promoted by Disal. I wanted to say thank you, especially to Jack Scholes, who gave me this incredible task. You know, you are going to write the cover article. And I will tell you all about the whole story behind this. But it was really an interesting moment for me to reflect on the things that I could create and how this would benefit educators and teachers from all over the world, hopefully. So should we get started then, huh? Let's get started. I have many things to cover. Yes. And I thought it would be a great idea for me to start by basically introducing myself. So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is André Hedlund. I am a teacher and a teacher educator based in Brazil. From Brazil, I was born here, and I consider myself the explorer. You will see that I'm really into this cosmological universe analogy. I'm going to use astronauts and different planets, galaxies, and stars to tell you my story, to tell you my journey. And I call myself the explorer because I recently found out, and I'm sharing this live with you, because I really hope that this will impact the people it has to impact. I found out that I possibly have what experts call high-functioning ADHD, attention deficit disorder, right? Which makes a lot of sense in a way, but it doesn't, because I took a bunch of tests, a battery of tests, neuropsychological tests quite recently, because I wanted to see or to understand my profile better. And I realized that on many occasions in my life, I procrastinated. I couldn't get things done. I was daydreaming. I was looking for something. I was trying to connect the dots, right? I have always been an excellent student. I had very, very good grades, actually. Some of the best grades in class. So I was, in a way, conforming to the rules. But at the same time, I was really looking for something different. I was exploring. I consider myself an explorer. And nowadays, I'm working with bilingual programs at Edify Education. So I help implement and I give support to teachers. I help train teachers. I design training sessions. But it's always the same thing. I always look for something else. I'm always trying to connect things. I'm trying to synthesize things. And I'm an example of how this can actually work. I think if you believe you have ADHD or if you believe you have some other condition, you can get yourself tested and you can understand yourself better. So that's the journey, the voyage of self-discovery that I wanted to share with you. Because my whole life was like this. I was looking for something. I wanted to make a contribution. I wanted to leave a legacy. And I know it might sound silly, but this is really what I wanted to do. I just wanted to make the world understood, through my eyes, through my perspective. And I take the opportunity to thank now my parents who gave me all the support to try things out. They never told me that I had to be this or that. They just told me to explore my possibilities. And explore, I did, right? That's what I did. And today we're going to talk about this conceptual framework that I designed for the cover of New Routes magazine that you will be able to read by the end of the session. Hopefully it's going to be out on their website. For those of you living in Brazil, there's a surprise coming as well. I'm sorry if you're not living in Brazil, nothing we can do now, but wait and see. And we're going to go over all of those things today. We're going to talk about the origins of this incredible framework, I hope, something that really makes sense. We're going to look at some of the analogies that I tried to use to make it easier for you to understand. So I really based the whole thing on physics, on astronomy, on cosmology, right? Astrophysics, because I use the laws of physics as a parallel to the science of learning, microcosm, quantum mechanics, macrocosm, planetary, solar system, interstellar levels, how you can apply this in the future, hopefully, and some conclusions to move forward. So going back to the origins, I think, again, part of my voyage, something that brought me here today, was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life. And I had started studying international relations. I actually have a bachelor's degree in international relations. And then after a while, I noticed that was interesting, but I was into education. I was teaching English. Then I started a master's in political science. I never finished it. I went to the US for a couple of months. I realized that I really wanted to be in education. And then, I don't know, it was one of those things, right? I met a mentor, somebody who means a lot to me, somebody who has become an inspiration, and her name is Mirella Ramaciotti. So Mirella, if you watch this, here's to you. Thank you very much. I met Mirella. She invited me to be part of this new SIG, the Mind, Brain, and Education SIG, because I was into neuroscience and psychology. And that's when I realized that I had a lot of possibilities ahead, that I could actually study MBE, Mind, Brain, Education. And that led me to my master's. I figured out that I could apply, to get a Chevening scholarship. And I did. I got the scholarship. I moved to the UK for 1 year, and I studied psychology of education at the University of Bristol. And that's when I was really introduced and exposed to all of those theories that I tried to compile, to put together here in this conceptual framework. But then, of course, I came back. I was trying to apply the things that I had learned. I was trying to train teachers, to design things, to create things. And I talked to Jack, the editor of New Routes, and then he asked me to write something. Not a cover article at the time, but I wrote an article about the theories of learning, how the mind and the brain learn. And then I think it was a successful article. I mean, he liked it. I know that other people enjoyed reading that as well. You can go to, yes, I will definitely share that article, André. It's New Routes issue 72, the one before the last, okay? And for some reason, I wanted to sort of follow up, actually. I wanted to write something related to that. And then Jack asked me to write the cover article. And I said, whoa. And he gave me a couple of ideas. So he said, well, maybe you can write something related to your dissertation, your master's dissertation, because my dissertation was really about looking at mind-brain education, a transdisciplinary area, and looking at all of those strategies or practices based on evidence or informed by evidence so that we can maybe have more positive teaching and learning outcomes in the classroom or in the school setting, whether it is remote or not. So I looked at all of those practices. I made a scale, and I really wanted to do something about that. And then Jack said, well, you can do that for the cover. I said, well, let's try. And then I kept thinking and thinking and thinking. And now I'm going to show you something, my thinking process. So I started drawing. Well, I'm not sure you can see. Okay, now you can. So I started drawing a few sketches of how I could present this. So I thought of a Venn diagram with a couple of principles of the science of learning, and then I started writing down a couple of learning principles, trying to make sense of that, trying to make some sort of drawing that could condense all of those theories together. And then it became this, so the early drawings. And then I moved on. And then, so now it's coming closer to the real thing, So you had different circles, different spheres with different principles based on different levels of analogy. That's when Cosmos came to mind a couple of months ago. And then I wanted to make it look nice, and I used pink paper, And then I started drawing it. But then there was something missing. I couldn't see it. I wanted to make it bigger, more visible, so I could actually work on it. And guess what? So this is my wall. This is a wallpaper that you can buy anywhere. And you can actually write using chalk, right? So this is a blackboard wallpaper. So that's where I drew the diagram. And then I started talking to Jack. So do you have anybody who can design that for me working at New Routes? And he said, well, we actually have a company that does the art for us, the diagrams and everything. So I started talking to Carol de Mauro. Thank you very much for all your help. And then I designed this. So this was my final thing. That's what I designed. I drew this. So after drawing this, I sent it to, yes, holy Jesus. I sent it to Carol. And, after a couple of emails, I think they were really able to grasp what I was getting at, what I wanted, right? Because I wanted everything to make sense. I wanted everything to feel right. And now, first time, I'm going to show you what it looks like then. How about that? Are you ready? So this is the cover of New Routes magazine. And as you can see, that's the illustration right there. It's quite small because I don't want you to look at everything now, but I promise I will show you the whole thing. By the end of the session, you will have seen everything. And what is it about, really? What is behind? What is the rationale here? There's so many frameworks. There's so many learning theories coming from the cognitive sciences, from psychology, cognitive psychology, developmental psychology, for, things about neuroscience, cognitive neuroscience especially, that they're just floating in the universe. They are all over the place. And we don't really know where they belong. We don't know what's the relationship that they have and how those theories can help us in a way. So many of you who have never done anything related to psychology are probably not aware of certain theories that you should be aware of if you want your students to learn more effectively, because it's part of the learning cosmos. So that's the idea. It's just getting all of those things together in one place. And for me to do that, I really wanted an analogy. I wanted something that could tell a story. And since I'm a geek and I'm always looking for new things and exploring, guess what I was doing when I was thinking about this framework? Well, I was reading a very interesting book by Stephen Hawking. Not sure you know this guy, Stephen Hawking. Remember this guy? A Brief History of Time, the illustrated version. And I remember what got me interested in this is because really I love the universe. I used to wonder as a kid what was out there. I used to want to be an astronaut, like many kids wanted to be an astronaut, probably. I looked up at the night sky and wondered and imagined, right? And when I started reading this book, I realized how incredibly didactic and, Stephen Hawking is a great teacher. If you look at how he writes and how he can actually help you understand very complex things. And what is it that he did in the book that served as one of the foundations for my conceptual framework? Using analogies, the power of analogies. And not only this guy, not just Stephen Hawking, another guy, this guy, Carl Sagan, huge fan of Carl Sagan. And he had, back in the 80s, remember that? Yes, André, exactly. So back in the 80s, he had a TV show called Cosmos, right? And I remember there was an episode that he explained how a Greek mathematician, philosopher, was able to calculate the circumference of our planet by actually using angles formed by different objects and their shadow. And how incredibly easy it was for me to understand that, right? Because of this guy's TV show. And I'm going to show you the book later. And that's what I wanted. I wanted analogies that could help me understand and help people understand what I was looking for, what I was trying to design. And one of my favorite analogies from Stephen Hawking's book was the expanding universe. Think of a black balloon, for example, with tiny dots of paint all over the surface. What happens if you blow air into this balloon, right? It grows, it expands. And what happens to those dots on the surface? If they are very close to one another, as it increases in size, they start moving apart from each other. And that's a very simple way to explain why galaxies and stars are moving away from each other if we do believe that the universe is in expansion. So I really wanted this analogy, and then it came to me, just hit me. That's what I have to call this conceptual framework, learning cosmos, right? And then I had to find basically the foundation, or let's say the thread that I had to use so that everything made sense. what was the most important or the logics behind constructing this conceptual framework? Just like the logics behind physics, right? So if you think about astrophysics, what are the laws that tell us how things work, how bodies move in the universe, small bodies, big bodies, laws of physics, right? What is the equivalent in our area, in our field as educators? The science of learning. So the science of learning has put together contributions from different cognitive sciences and other sciences related to psychology, education, and also neuroscience, so that we can go to one place, one reference, and understand how learning can take place. We can understand how our students learn best, what are the best practices based on those contributions, on evidence, on empirical evidence. We have tested those things, right? And then I would say that one of the major revolutions that happened in the last century was what this man was able to do, to gift the world. Albert Einstein with his theory of general relativity, right? That changed how we understood the universe and the laws of physics. And he used to say, two things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity. And I'm not sure about the universe. Apparently, he was wrong about the universe. Nowadays, we believe that the universe is in full expansion, right? Or maybe that we don't have just one universe, we have a multiverse. So there are many theories nowadays. But we come up with those theories by observing the cosmos. And I would compare this incredible discovery by Albert Einstein to the birth of cognitive sciences at the turn of the last century. Well, 2 centuries ago, right? 19th century to the 20th century, when we started looking inside people's brains, when we started analyzing people's behaviors and coming up with theories to explain why they were a certain way, right? So this is why I believe that the science of learning, based on cognitive psychology, social psychology, cognitive neuroscience, has to be the thread that gives us, something to stand on. Actually, that gives us the theory, the framework for us to follow and go further. And then, if you start then dividing or looking at different realms of influence or different spheres of influence for what happens to our learners, you will realize that the very first realm is the realm that we cannot really see very well, is what physicists call microcosm, the physics of the small. For us in education, that's genetics. So genetics, the quantum mechanics of learning. So for those studying astrophysics or theoretical physics, okay, can you hear me? I felt like there was a problem with the connection. Yes, you still okay? Great. I didn't freeze or anything. Okay. So for physics, for physicists studying the tiny subatomic particles, they have to use powerful machines to be able to observe things, right? And that's very important. That's incredibly important, actually, because what we're thinking about nowadays is that the keys to unlocking what is hidden there will help us revolutionize how we see the world, right? The same thing for genetics. As a matter of fact, there is a researcher. I had the pleasure of watching one of his lectures at the University of Bristol, Robert Plowman, and his team. And he says that the magnitude of genetic influence was about 65% for year-long teacher assessments of academic performance based on UK national curriculum criteria, and about 55% for direct test data. So that's the thing. A lot of the things that learners do, their abilities to learn certain things, they are part of their genetic makeup. And we have very little influence on that. Of course, contextual stimulation and nurture, if you think about upbringing, for example, they have an impact on genetic factors, right? But there's a lot of things that we cannot change because they're genetic. So we are not going to discuss this very much. But this is also there. It should be there in the learning cosmos. This is what we're going to focus on. So we're going to focus on the levels that we have some sort of influence on as teachers, as educators, or at least that we can help our students become aware of them so that they can learn how to deal with those things. So when I was looking for the perfect analogy, the expanding universe, the spheres of influence, I looked at the cosmos and I realized the very first level of analysis that we have is our planet. We are inside, we are on the planet. And then we start moving outside, outward. And then we have the solar system, and then we have different solar systems and different stars, and then we have the galaxy. So let's focus on the planet first, because the planet means the self, the individual student. And within the self and surrounding the self, you have different spheres that influence their outcomes. The very first sphere is the cognitive sphere, because this is the sphere that we talk more about. It's about perception, awareness, attention, memory, use of language, executive functioning, all of those things, right? And then we have the emotional sphere. That's the one we talk about, but we don't take it into consideration all the time, do we? So this is something we have to change, because the cognitive sphere interferes with the emotional sphere and vice versa. They can be isolated for us to be able to explore them, to understand them, but one is influencing the other. And then we have the sphere of attitudes and beliefs. So learning how to learn, thinking about thinking, the way that you believe you can learn best or not, that will influence your academic performance for sure. And then we have the motivational sphere, and the motivational sphere is a little further away from the self, which means that we, as educators, we have lots of influence there, even though there's intrinsic motivation that comes from within, but we can also help our students be more motivated. And that's what the diagram looks like. This is what, well, the planetary level, right? So that's it. It's amazing. Thank you very much, Renata. It's amazing, right? And then I forgot to tell you one thing. All of those here watching live with me, living in Brazil, you will get a physical sample of New Routes magazine with this article, as long as you send to eventos@disal.com.br, okay? So you're going to get the magazine for you to read. For those not here in Brazil, no worries. You'll be able to access through the website. And then, of course, you can even download the PDF, if I'm not mistaken. So, and you can explore the digital magazine, which is great because you can click on the links. So this is what it looks like from the planetary level. And why planetary? Because those things are surrounding the self, the individual. Think about, live in Brazil, exactly. So if you live in Brazil, perfect. So they're surrounding the individual, the student. Each student has different cognition and emotional skills and attitudes and beliefs towards learning and different levels or degrees of motivation, right? All of those things are together, are surrounding our learners. You can think of our learners as planets, really. Think of those planets floating around out there in the universe. Of course, we want all our learners to be planets like planet Earth, don't we? Where you have a biosphere, an atmosphere, teeming with life, green and blue and vivid, full of colors. That's the kind of learner that we want. But sometimes we get learners that only have water, but they have lots of carbon dioxide, They have a very thin atmosphere. Sometimes we get learners who are very far away from the sun. So maybe it's too cold there. Sometimes we get learners who are massive, but most of their mass is only gas. That sounds terrible, right? But I'm using an analogy to make you reflect on on the individuality of all of those planets, how incredibly unique they are, right? Because there's so many different systems and mechanisms at play that we cannot say that two students are the same, and then they should not be treated the same, right? Just like black holes, somebody mentioned there. Yes. So let's look at those individual levels. If you think about the first level, the first sphere within the level, actually, that's the cognitive sphere. So why is it important? You don't have to memorize all of it at once. But I think if you have this as a guide, you can start looking for possible solutions. You can start identifying potential problems. Because maybe one of the problems with that particular student in that classroom or school setting has to do with their cognitive abilities. It has to do with their capability of paying attention, for example, or being engaged, or practicing and receiving feedback, or consolidating memory, right? So why did I select those items? Because I looked at two very important researchers in neuroscience, my professor Paul Howard-Jones and his team of collaborators, with the engage, build, and consolidate framework. First, we have to engage our students' attention for us to start building new knowledge, for then our students to consolidate. And then when they have consolidated, and that takes time, it doesn't happen like that, then they will have learned. But I also looked at Stanislas from France, Collège de France, and he talks about the 4 pillars of learning. He says that for anybody to learn, there has to be attention, there has to be engagement, error feedback, and consolidation. So those things, they overlap nicely, and I believe they should form the cognitive level or the cognitive sphere within the planetary level, within the individual level of your students, right? But then again, this is not a fixed conceptual framework, because if you look at other authors, you can get other cognitive principles that maybe should be part of that. And this is why I really like this, because you can make it yours. This is for you to use according to your needs. So that it has to do with cognition. So maybe you want to look at executive functioning, like switching, for example, cognitive flexibility, for example. It depends on what you're trying to assess. Then we come to the emotional sphere. So the emotional sphere has to do with basically emotion regulation or self-regulation. So I'm sure you've heard of those authors before, haven't you? Daniel Goleman, who popularized the idea of emotional intelligence, right? And then within emotional intelligence, you have a bunch of principles like self-awareness, social skills, for example, self-regulation, right? And then you have emotion regulation that also has to do with self-regulation. It has to do with controlling yourself. It has to do with inhibiting. All of those things are there by Gross and Thompson. And then you have something very, very up to date, I'd say, by Lisa Feldman Barrett, The Theory of Constructed Emotions. And she says that it's not really emotions that control us, but we have much more control over our emotions than we had thought, because our emotions are predictions of what's coming. And then based on our body budget, so our body will make a calculation of how much energy it will have to spend, then certain things start happening at the biological level. So you as an educator, based on this conceptual framework, you as a policymaker, as family, as parents, you have to know those things. You have to understand those things so that you can help your students reach a more optimal, let's say, result or outcome when they're learning. And that's the thing. I believe we focus too much on the cognitive aspect of learning, paying attention, making new memory, and remembering stuff, right? But that's just one sphere at one level of the whole framework. That's why I believe this framework can be incredibly useful for you to look at the other components of this incredible and vast universe surrounding your learner. So if you look at the other one, the next one, every student and you as teachers, educators, you have different attitudes and beliefs toward learning. And then we can help you change those beliefs or work with those beliefs. You have an influence there. You can help your students become more metacognitive, as in John Flavel, to select metacognitive knowledge, different people. Where does it come from? Different metacognitive experiences. How can I acquire or learn this knowledge? In metacognitive regulation, how can I adjust the things that I'm doing so that I can keep doing those things? How can I stay on task when things are going wrong, right? You can also help yourselves and your students become more self-efficacious, according to Albert Bandura. So to stick to long-term goals, to be proactive, to learn from their mistakes. Just like Carol Dweck says in her growth mindset concept, right? And I'm sure you've heard of this one. It's more about the process, really, about effort, about commitment, long-term commitment, than it is about being intelligent. So if you learn more about those principles, you can help your students learn more effectively. And then the motivational sphere. And here, I looked at the research done by Ryan and DC, who are the authors of Intrinsic and Extrinsic Motivation. So you may have heard of those things, right? And also Daniel Pink, because there's a very interesting overlap. And Daniel Pink is a speaker. He has a book, Drive, The Surprising Truth of What Motivates Us. And he talks about autonomy, mastery, purpose, right? Ryan and DC, they talk about relatedness, the sense of belonging, so that you actually want to be there in that setting, learning with your peers, from your peers, together, from your teacher as well. We have to understand those things. We have to explore the tiny universes within the universe of motivation. We also have to look at the physics of the large. We have to look at the things that are within our reach, because they are a little further away from the individual, from the self. And that's the macrocosm. So if you think about it, the very first level, right after the individual level of your students as planets, is what's around them, around the planets. And that's the solar system. So the solar system level should include a couple of things that maybe you are not so aware of, that you should become aware of, because they are consolidated theories based on evidence coming from different branches of psychology. For example, the sun, the center of the universe, active learning, because that's what we want, right? We want student-centeredness. We want our students to be those who are going to have the best, the most unique learning experience and learn more effectively. So the students at the center, active learning. We also want our students to be in a flexible learning environment, because we know that each student is very unique. So we have to be able to give them something that they can do that challenges them, but then also something else to someone who already knows how to do that. So we have to think of how we design things around our students. And speaking of that, looking at Robert Bjork, desirable difficulties. So when we are designing the learning experience, we want our students to learn effectively, and we want them to actually learn based on what we know from psychology. And we know, for example, that variation is very important. We also know that retrieving, trying to remember the things you've been exposed to, very important. Interleaving, not just doing one thing, a block, but actually doing something else, going back to that. Those things are very effective. And the learning design conceptual, or the learning design concept, was really based on the idea that it's not just about instructions, right? Because we normally talk about instructional design, but I'm really talking about the learning experience, and many times more hands-on, with students being the protagonists of their own learning, and you working on the side, guiding them, just making sure that the environment is conducive, is adequate for them to learn more adequately, let's say. And then we are moving further away from our solar system. Now we are hundreds, possibly thousands, even hundreds of thousands of light years away. As a matter of fact, for those of you who don't know, our Milky Way galaxy has around 100, possibly even 400 billion stars. So it would take anyone trying to cross our Milky Way 100,000 years at the light speed, huh? Wow. But then what does that have to do with the learning cosmos? Well, the environment, the context where your students are matters a lot. Because maybe you know all about cognition, you know about emotion, you know about attitudes and beliefs, you know about motivation, you know what you have to do. You are very eager and willing to do those things, but then you work in a school that does not appreciate those things. That's the context, their approach, their ideology, their mindset. Or maybe you want to do a lot of things and they don't have the infrastructure for you to do those things. Maybe you have very, very large groups and you have no technology, and then it's really hard for you to make things more flexible, for you to differentiate, for example. So those things matter. They matter quite a lot. Or maybe you have excellent infrastructure and you have very good approach, student-centered, but the staff you're working with, they need more training. They need more development, for example, because you are a school manager or you're a mentor. So this is what I call the environmental level, the interstellar level. It's between the stars. It's far from it's not really in the immediate surroundings of the students, but it's there. It's the school itself. It's where you teach, and you have to take those things into consideration. So that's why they should be part of the learning cosmos. And here's the full contextual framework of the learning cosmos for you. And what I like about this, it's that you can zoom in and out as much as you want, and you can look at different spheres of influence, and you can learn about those principles. You can become more acquainted, aware of those authors, so that you can better plan your lessons. You can better deliver your lessons. As a school manager, maybe you can develop teacher training courses or teacher development courses based on some of those aspects. So maybe what your teachers really need to know is on the motivational sphere. So they have to know about autonomy, mastery, relatedness, and purpose. So maybe they can study Daniel Pink. Maybe they can study DC and Ryan, right? So that's the thing. That's what I want with this learning cosmos. I want to give people something to base themselves on when they're making decisions about what goes inside the classroom, what works best. And it's based on all of those authors who have their theories consolidated. When I say theory is consolidated, I'm not saying it cannot change. It probably will change. A lot of things have changed already. But this is a very good start, I think. So which spheres should I know more about? Should I focus on the motivational sphere or the cognitive sphere? What are some of the principles about attention? How can I make sure that my students are paying attention and they are engaged? How can I develop emotion regulation in my students? How can I help my students become more self-regulated and more emotionally intelligent? Or maybe I'm looking at an individual student, one of those planets in your classroom, and that student has everything going just fine on the cognitive level. You can see that they're paying attention. They're looking, well, maybe you have some evidence that they're paying attention. They're looking, they're engaged, they're nodding. It feels like they're paying attention. They're doing their homework, they're doing their tasks, but then something else is going on because they're not able to perform. They're not able to learn as you had intended. So you have to look at other spheres. It could be an emotional sphere. It could be part of their motivational sphere. It could be the context, perhaps. So that's what I want you to do using this conceptual framework. I want you to look at the vastness of the universe so that you can better identify where potential problems are, and you can study the people who have discussed those things. So you can equip yourself with the knowledge and the skills and the competencies you need to deal with that. And then hopefully help your students improve their learning outcomes. That's why I designed the Learning Cosmos. Yes, I will share the pictures again. You can, yes, low self-esteem, yes. And now we're wrapping up so you can start asking questions. I see there are some questions already. How do you apply it then? I think if you look at what we've been doing for a long time in Brazil, you have policy. That policy is created top down, and normally we have to follow the parameters of policy, kind of like a black hole, like sucking everything. There's a vortex, around cloud, dust, all of those materials in the universe, like circling, swirling around the black hole. And we just follow what's going on, basically, because we have to, right? But I think if we look at the learning cosmos and we realize that the black hole sucks everything, including light, and light here as research, as the evidence that we have, the contributions that we have from science, from cognitive science especially, then we will realize that we can use that. We can use this light being sucked into the black hole to inform policy and to change policy and to impact what they're doing so that they will create better parameters to help practice. But not just, we can just look at, we don't have to wait for policy to tell us what to do. We look at the light being sucked into the vortex, and then we design our practice around this, Yes, Akemi, that's great. Thank you very much. We design our practice around research. That's why I believe this can be applied in a very useful way. Because if you understand how we learn better, looking at all of those theories and principles and frameworks in a way that they're put together concisely around something that makes sense, an analogy, the universe, the cosmos, I believe that's less work for you, teacher, educator, really. It's a useful guide, and that's what I want, really. My conclusion is this should be a useful guide, something that you can use to help you realize how incredibly beautiful and intricate the universe surrounding our learners is. I also think this could be a reflective tool for you to see which spheres do I have to learn more about. You probably know more, you probably know a lot about cognition, but do you know anything about attitudes and beliefs and how you can use the principles proposed by those authors to actually make change. You can also give yourselves and your students and even your schools a possible direction, something to work on, something to accomplish based on this conceptual framework. And remember, this is a flexible framework. I chose those things based on certain authors. If you want, maybe you can even change the sequence. You can change, maybe you can start from the emotional sphere and then the cognitive sphere, for example, because emotions, they come in a very instinctive way, right? And cognition is something that only humans have developed it further when compared to animals, according to our assessment, our perspective. So you can include things, you can remove things, you can expand things. Instead of autonomy, mastery, relatedness, and purpose in this motivational sphere, maybe you can just add extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. But still, you're talking about the same things. I just zoomed in a little bit more. And a candle in the dark, just like this book by Carl Sagan, Science as a Candle in the Dark. And I think it's very important for me to say that I'm very worried about what's going on in the world. This anti-science, denialist movement that is pushing this dark agenda, that people are just believing in things that don't make sense. They're actually going backwards in a way, where when it comes to science, they think there are conspiracy theories everywhere. I really want my learning cosmos design to be a candle in the dark for educators, for policymakers, for anybody in education who wants to understand more how we can learn more effectively. And I wanted to read the last paragraph before I move on to questions. But the last paragraph of my article goes like this. I only ask you not to look at this framework, or any, to be fair, as a prescriptivist and deterministic tool that you can use to label your learners. That's not its purpose. I don't think we could ever transform this into a psychometric scale to assign a score to the learning experience at any given school. Look at the learning cosmos the same way I look at the cosmos, with humility, curiosity, and awe. When we realize the magnificence of the universe and how only part of it is observable to us, it helps us understand how incredibly lucky we are to exist. Learning is beautifully intricate, and we have only begun our voyage of self-discovery. The implications of our findings will shape generations to come. Our unmatched ability to learn has given us the tools to understand the universe and learning itself. And I wrap up with two of my greatest inspirations for the learning cosmos. Carl Sagan, who used to say, the cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself. And of course, Stephen Hawking, amazing. He used to say that, remember to look up at the stars and not down at your feet. Try to make sense of what you see and wonder about what makes the universe exist. Be curious. And I hope that my learning cosmos design gives you the push to explore more, to be more curious, and to learn about all of those beautiful theories, of those principles that I can tell you, they're going to help you, help your learners learn more effectively. So thank you, everyone. Special thanks to my dad, who passed away 2 years ago. So this is to you, Dad. Sven Åke Lennart Hedlund, who was born in Sweden, came to Brazil, met my mom, who's there, Elizabeth Santana, got married, and they had me, they had my brother, and here I am. And my dad would turn 79 years old 2 days ago, on May 10th. So this is to you, Dad, my gift to you. And the funny thing is that my mom actually had her birthday last week on May 6th. And special thanks to my buddy Rodolfo Maciello and his beautiful daughter Sofia, who is celebrating her first birthday today. She was born actually today, May 12th. And thank you very much, everyone. It was really a pleasure sharing this with you. I really hope you can use this. I really hope that this actually serves its purpose, that it helps you somehow understand learning better and how you can help your students, how you can help your teachers. And now I think I have a few minutes for questions. Yeah, some people were born on May 7th. Oh, that's awesome. That's amazing. That's really cool. Yes. By the way, if you took pictures during this presentation, how about you use a hashtag so I can find you? How about you use Learning Cosmos hashtag, and then I'll find you on social media, huh? I think that's easier for me to communicate with you. You can click here. You can see there's a call to action button right there. And if you click there on top of your screen, you will be able to access the digital version of our beautiful New Routes magazine, okay? And I know there are a couple of questions. I'm not sure. Let's see if I can answer some. Let's see. If I can share the article. Yes, looks awesome. Okay. Yeah, I think many questions about receiving the magazine, right? Share the pictures. Yeah, you can. I think you can download the PDF. How can you avoid being sucked into this black hole, right? Because even our colleagues pull us down. Isabella, that's a great question. I advise, watch Interstellar. That's a great book, a great movie by Christopher Nolan, and Matthew McConaughey is the lead actor, right? He got sucked into the black hole. Spoilers, I'm sorry, but he survived, right? He actually saved the world. So I think it's all about staying in the light. You get sucked into the black hole, but look at the research, the evidence, everything really. And then hopefully you will be able to have good arguments to avoid, the being lost forever in the cosmos. Yeah, that's it, everyone. I think those are the questions. If you have any other questions, again, I have an upcoming book on this because, this is such a complex thing that I really have to write a chapter about every sphere. So I'm actually working on that. So I remember the first draft I sent to Jack was really long, and he had to make some cuts, and I made some cuts, and I saved those bits for the book. So someday there will be a book about this, hopefully this year. Okay, I really hope so. How can you access my talk? Go to my website. For those of you who are still here, if you go to edcrocks.com, you can contact me. You can send me an email. You can read my blog posts. There are some videos there too, on Instagram as well. EDC Rocks on Instagram. I'm also on Spotify, Anchor. So there's a podcast, EDC Rocks podcast. So you can check that out. Okay, everyone? Yes, the magazine is free. You can access. So I think the link is somewhere here. Or you can go to Disal, and then you can access. And for those of you here in Brazil, you will get, as long as you send the email, you will get your own physical sample of the magazine. How cool is that, huh? It's beautiful. If you liked the design and the conceptual framework, everything, you can imagine how I felt when I got it the first time, because I drew everything, right? I drew on the wall, I drew here. So it was really me drawing, but then when I saw for the first time, I had tears in my eyes. It was really Wow, this is exactly what I was thinking of, and they were able to capture the essence of this thing, right? So yeah, it was pretty amazing. All right, everyone. Thank you, Antonio. Thank you, Victoria. Yes, thank you very much, everyone. It was a pleasure. Really, really honored. Julita, William, Nuria, Lilia, yes, Kalina, it was really amazing. Thank you very much for your presence, virtual presence here. The name of the film is Interstellar. Inter by Christopher Nolan. Great, great movie. I mean, I really loved it, really. So you should watch. Ah, we have some students here. Cool. Hello, students. Bye bye, everyone. That's it. Okay? See you.